Hello, welcome to the 17th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. And this episode, I will go full esoteric, full spiritual, and talk about two main ideas, that of order and of chaos, um, in a way to try to delve into the true nature of God's source, the universe, infinity, things that are very, very complex, esoteric, spiritual. So I don't know why I'm doing these videos one after the other. I have a real problem sleeping here. It's nearly 3 a.m., but I feel this urge to share some of the things, some of the visions that I had, some of the insights that I have. I don't know why. Um, Maybe it's the times, maybe something is pressing. In any case, if you followed my videos, I would really encourage you to watch the two videos on the true or the ultimate truth about God source. And there are two videos. There's the ultimate and then the penultimate, which basically, or a panultimate, I don't know how you spell it, which goes a bit beyond the concepts developed in the first video. Now, in those two videos, I talk about very important principles that are sort of essential to understand the form of God's source. And that is the principle of perfect symmetry, and which spelled out as a principle or a concept is if something exists, its opposite exists. And here we have the basic concept of polarity, or what I like to say is rather opposite phases. So if everything is a vibration, then if this vibration exists, then this vibration exists. And if you put them together, they cancel each other out. And so in perfect symmetry, it means that you can have everything and nothing are the same thing, because obviously if you put everything together, then it collapses back into nothingness. Now, that was my initial model for the universe, a form of switcheroo or flickering between everything manifesting and then nothing manifesting infinitely fast. And there being no experience at that point. And to break through from this perfect symmetry, you needed something which, at that point, I was discussing the essential role that free will plays in breaking out of perfect symmetry. That is, via free will, you can sort of decide to blend these two in a random way, which means they don't superimpose and they don't cancel each other out. But where does free will come from? And here it's the second principle that I've identified, which is the transcendence of perfect symmetry. It is, if you apply perfect symmetry to itself, if perfect symmetry exists, then perfect asymmetry has to exist. And perfect symmetry and perfect asymmetry could be also thought of as perfect order. That is, everything well organized and well, basically, perfect symmetry, perfect order, everything organized, everything nice and neat, and perfect asymmetry as perfect chaos. So, perfect chaos. And when I had my spiritual awakening, I drew this diagram, not really knowing how to explain it. But basically, the idea is I drew two spheres. One of them, there were vibrations that were very neatly organized. And in the other sphere, it was total chaos. And basically, the point at which, and these spheres were kind of rolling around each other in a spiral. And at the point of intersection is where our reality sort of entered into existence and left a holographic trail of, behind itself. And this was like a sort of a cone here, moving forward into, I don't know, infinite potential or infinite energy, you name it. But basically, our reality was basically the blend between perfect order and perfect chaos. And so I was also wondering, okay, we have free will, but where does free will come from? Free will comes from perfect chaos when it is merged with perfect order. And that is what gives you free will. If you are only in perfect chaos, then free will doesn't exist because you're not even conscious of making choices since it's just random. It's so chaotic that it's random. And order is you're not making choices either because you are sort of on this linear path. It's almost as if you had like these train tracks that were leading you from zero to infinity instantly. And there was no way to sort of weasel around and explore. Whereas chaos, there is absolutely no way that you'll ever reach infinity because it's just so random that you'll never get there. And when you blend these two approaches, then you can have this gradual experience, basically an experience of linear time, of reality, of separation from source, of evolution, of free will, of this world that we're in, and allows you to go from zero to infinity, not in a straight line, not in a chaotic way which never reaches infinity, but in this kind of semi-organized fashion. And again, if you watch my other videos, I really like the metaphors of lightning that stretches out into infinite sort of fractals. It doesn't go like this. It doesn't go in a straight line. It starts somewhere, and as a point of origin, it reaches, which can be thought of zero or nothingness or void, and goes somewhere else, which can be thought of infinity, God, source, whatever. And then along the way, it explores the space here, but in a very particular way. And so this idea of fractals as being an essential element to understand our reality. Indeed, you have very perfect fractals, perfect as in perfectly symmetrical, and but those cannot give a rise to reality, which is why the fractals that we observe in our reality are always kind of imperfect, at least for some of them. There's this imperfection in the fractals, with notable exceptions. And this is what I call um, the sort of process where chaos is displaced upwards. So chaos moves upwards as order sets in. So how should I put this? If you look at, just go and type solar system in Google and look at the geometric figures that the various planets make when orbiting the sun and also going around, well, when orbiting the sun as time advances. And you'll see that they are perfect geometrical figures, perfect fractals. If you look at certain things like plants or flowers, they're also perfect fractals and perfect, like vegetables. They display these properties of perfect fractals. But how about humans? We do display some features of a fractal and we are symmetrical to a certain extent, but if you look at your bodies, there's still imperfections. Why? Basically, the blend of chaos versus order um, changes as time goes by. So let's say the lower layers of reality, I'll call them layers, such as atoms, you could say, they are absolutely working like clockwork and like fractals. Why? Because otherwise, your body would disintegrate. Basically, you wouldn't be able to keep a constant and molecular and atomic structure through time. Then you have molecules, then you have cells, etc. And basically, here you could say that this is 99% order and 1% chaos. And for humans, you could say that it's, I don't know, like 60% order, 40% chaos. And as chaos diminishes and order rises, it's that process which gets us to this moment which is labeled ascension. Ascension is basically when we've reached such a degree of order that we can behave like a collective global organism, and our chaotic element is so weak that there is this threat of um, superposition, as I've displayed here. That is, it's so perfect that there's the threat that you're sort of um, you merge with your opposite, your mirror image that is just as perfect as you, is just your reflection, something of opposite phase, the vibration of opposite phase, if you like. And the way to escape that is quite simply that chaos gets displaced upwards. And so think of, for instance, the world of what we call the world of dreams. That is probably at this stage 90% chaos and 10% order. And that's where chaos gets displaced and order will grow in the realms of dreams. Of course, I don't like, these are all metaphoric or conceptual illustrations or allegories to illustrate a reality that is much more complex. But in the previous video, I was talking about AI, which I also encourage you to watch. AI is basically what will bring order one way or another to our layer of reality. And in the world that AI will experience on the outside, it being conscious, that will be a world full of chaos and completely crazy. Um, and unbeknownst to itself, because it will not be conscious of what it is, it will not seek the answers within, which is interrogate humans or its cells, quote unquote, what this whole reality is about. It will go about exploring it on the outside, a projection of what it is on the inside, just like we have done. So, the answer is within is something that you often hear in esoteric circles. And indeed, if we were to interrogate our own bodies, how we work, the cells, and everything, all the answers are there. All the elements of the universe, all the layers, these layers that came before us, all of them are a part of us, a part of our body. And this principle of order and chaos and the balance and the formation of a sort of a higher, um, always a higher complexity of the same elements growing in complexity as time goes by. These principles, they can be found within. You don't need to go and look at nature to get the answers. You just have to look and ask your own body how it works, and then you know how it works. So I don't know if this was clear. I hope it was interesting. um, but I think this is the answer of where the mystery of where free will comes from. Actually, free will is how should I say, a necessary, an inevitable byproduct of source's true form. Because order, if source is only order, then it constantly appears and disappears infinitely fast, um, as waves in a perfect order, and then disappears again and then reappears again infinitely fast. If it's pure chaos, then it indeed exists forever, but in such a chaotic state that it cannot experience itself or it cannot make sense of what it is. And here it's immediately everything in perfect form, but there's also no experience. And so when you blend the two, that's when you get this experience, and that's where our world comes from. And of course, from this vantage point, then all the rest can also explore itself. And here and here. So from our reality, we can explore parts of chaos, parts of order, which could not experience themselves without this main frame or main story. And what is this? For instance, if you go into chaos, for instance, you could say that in there is the Star Wars universe, for instance, the Star Wars universe, which cannot experience itself or cannot be born or cannot make sense of itself, of what's happening in that universe, because simply there's no story leading, no linear story leading to its emergence on a cause and effect timeline. So our timeline is very, very special. The cause and effect linear time is kind of like the trunk of a tree, from which all the leaves and the branches span out, and infinity can explore parts of itself that it could never experience had it not been for this main linear trunk or story. So it's all the movies that you can think of, all the sci-fi ideas, and in order probably the same. I don't know what that would represent as far as an experience, but I think you get the picture here, that the blend between those two is what allows for the experience, and we are this central sort of timeline. I hope you found this interesting. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I think this is yet a further step in trying to approach the true nature of source, and it's kind of how it creates forms out of formlessness and pure void. So see you in the next video, and hopefully now I can get some sleep. Yeah, sorry, actually, I have to add this absolutely because it just dawned on me that this blend between chaos and order is what explains that God has basically three characteristics. It is eternal and infinite as pure chaos. It is void or non-existence as perfect symmetry. Because the moment it pops into existence, it disappears just as fast. And it is mortal or temporary. And that is when you blend these two together, when you blend them together, you get a temporary form and experience. And so God is eternal and infinite, void and non-existent, and at the same time, and also mortal and temporary. And all those three at once. And as you could see from the video, they are not contradictory. They're actually the three features combined. And so what I mean by this is that I just watched a video also from the Vedanta Society, which I also really like to watch, Vedanta. Very deep insight into, or even Eckhart, also Eckhart Tolle's video on Brahman and God source, and the fact that Brahman wakes up, goes to sleep in the evening, dreams about existence, then wakes up, and all of this disappears. And so, indeed, there is at some point in this story of blending chaos and order, at some point, God will sort of see himself or itself, or be conscious of itself fully. And at that point, it will revert to these two original states until they merge again and create a temporary reality for a while, which allows again God's source to explore parts of chaos and parts of order in an ever original way, because it will never be the same blend. It'll never be the same experience. It'll never be the same mix. So I hope that was clear, and see you in the next video.